What's up, friends? It's your boy, Max Mogren, reporting live for you here at Wake Up News. This is Wake Up Wyoming for Tuesday, October 24th, 2017. Thank you so much for showing up, chiming in. I'm your host, Max Mogren, live for you. We got a big show for you today. Wow. If anybody tuned in for our interview yesterday with Aaron Hawkins of StormCloudsGathering, pretty wild talking with him. What an experience for him and his family and his friends out there on the island of Dominica. I want to apologize to everybody for the technical difficulties we had yesterday. What's up, David? What's up, Shannon? Thank you so much for tuning in. If it looks like I'm looking around and distracted, it's because I'm like running the show. I'm like the one-man wrecking crew, putting your comments up here. Really appreciate all of you being with us here at Wake Up Wyoming. I got a new webcam. Thanks to people supporting the show. We got a new webcam going. I subscribed to this new video service so I can, like, I don't know, do more. Again, I'm getting used to the new service here. David, Coco Rico, the richest coconut of all. What's up, brother? Thank you all for tuning in. Again, thank you also for your patience as we're trying to figure out the new system here. I can see why like a TV network will have, you know, a guy working the soundboard, another person like switching between scenes, and somebody on screen reading off a teleprompter, because it's pretty hard to do all these things simultaneously. Chi-Town Nista, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you all like the new format here. We've got no shortage of news to get into today, so I'm going to just jump right into it. It does look better, huh? It sounds better too? Good. You know, $100 for this camera. It's a Logitech something or another. Apparently I can even like change the background so it looks like I'm like on the beach in Tahiti or something. So that's kind of fun. Sounds great. Good. Brian Peterson, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. Daniel Martinez Jr., good afternoon to you too, sir. And we're going to get into it. Check this out. Getting real slick now. Woo! First headline of the day for you, my friends. Forget ISIS. Government corruption tops Americans' biggest fears. As Americans gear up to celebrate Halloween at the end of October, a recent survey has revealed the fears that really keep people up at night. Chapman University survey polled 1,207 U.S. adults on their levels of fear across 80 different categories. And here's what they discovered. Americans' top fears 2017. Number one on the list. Oh, no. What happened? Sorry about that. My bad. Again, just getting used to the new format here. Thanks for your patience. There we go. That's what we're looking for. Americans' top fears. 74.5% of Americans reported corrupt government officials. Note only 47% of Americans thought they were worried about North Korea. A very small, well, I mean, that's still half. But important to note that 3 out of 4 Americans surveyed said that corrupt government officials were a big deal. Moving on to our next story, looking at Dominica, the island of Dominica, where our friend Aaron Hawkins is. If you caught our interview with him yesterday, wow, pretty wild. Interestingly, on Dominica, the energy industry has been put back on their feet by Venezuela, of all places. So, yeah, it's a disaster there on Dominica. If you haven't checked out StormCloudsGathering's video they posted yesterday, wild footage there. Kudos to them for putting their money where their mouth is and, you know, truly going for resiliency. I want to thank everybody for their patience as we dealt with the issues there yesterday. At first, we had them on Skype, and it sounded like they were like in some 1970s acid rock song with a bunch of reverb. And then we got them on the phone, but the only way to do it with my limited equipment here was putting this bad dog right here on speakerphone. Real nice telephone we got here. So sorry about all the the bad audio quality yesterday. We were trying our hardest to get the best possible quality for you all. And we're going to keep working on that here. Again, thanks to your support via Patreon. I've got a new webcam. We got a new service here where I can show all this fancy stuff to you. Moving on to Puerto Rico, like going back in time, Puerto Ricans put their survival skills to the test. The most interesting article on Puerto Rico today, the small Montana firm lands Puerto Rico's biggest contract to get the power back on. Okay, this doesn't make much sense here. For the sprawling effort to restore Puerto Rico's crippled electrical grid, the territory's state-owned utility has turned to a 2-year-old company from Montana that had just 2 full-time employees on the day Hurricane Maria made landfall. That's right, 2 employees based out of Montana. The company, Whitefish Energy, has signed a $300 million contract with the Puerto Rico Electrical Power Authority to repair and reconstruct large portions of the island's electrical infrastructure. Whitefish said Monday that it has 280 workers in the territory using linemen from across the country as subcontractors, and they're bringing in more 10 or 20 more people per day. It seems pretty wild, doesn't it? I mean, it seems wild to me. You'd think that they have people capable of putting power lines up in Puerto Rico, and it just seems pretty wild to hire a company that's 2 years old. It only had 2 full-time employees on the day that Hurricane Maria made landfall, and it's based in Montana, of all places, to deal with the Puerto Rican recovery. You think they'd want to keep that stuff local, but what do I know? Moving on to the California wildfires. California fires took thousands of homes. Now rent in the hardest hit areas is soaring. Okay, what I really want to show here, though, is this picture, right? You can see there the classic situation in California where you got houses totally decimated. Off in the background, we see trees that still have leaves on them, which seems kind of odd if a forest fire came ripping through there, powered by hurricane force winds. But more importantly, look at these cars. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure wildfires don't flip over cars. You know, maybe these cars were already upside down. Maybe this is like some modern art installation in somebody's yard. Maybe they had these cars stored up in the attic, and when the house burned down, they flipped over. But I just don't understand, you know, how a wildfire, let's assume these cars were just parked normally like normal cars. How the heck does a wildfire flip cars over? And equally important, how does it get so darn hot that it will literally melt the steel frames? You can see those steel frames are totally warped. We all know, you know, jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams. Tomorrow, we've got Richard Gage from Architects and Engineers for 911Truth. So that should be interesting. David Cocorico Sedano saying when they blow up, they flip. Let me throw that comment in there. That's a really good point, David. But like looking at this, you know, I don't think they really blow up like Hollywood would have us believe. And if you look at this car, you can see the fuel tank is still intact there. You know, if a fuel tank was blowing up, you'd think that the fuel tank would look like it was ruptured in some way. That fuel tank doesn't really look like that. So I don't know. The whole situation out there in California with the wildfires kind of stinks. What other pictures do we got in here? I don't know. But moving on, it's really sad, the situation here. Jeff Sugarman escaped his burning home in Santa Rosa. This week he faced the horrors of the region's housing market. He saw a rental house listed for $3,700 a month, but when he emailed, the owner told him the price had soared. He said insurance companies have been calling him all day and were willing to pay $4,700 to $5,000 a month to house fire victims, so he'd better be prepared to pay more. He said he was appalled and it was wrong. Okay, the wildfires killed 42 people and destroyed 8,400 buildings. An analysis conducted by the Guardian by Zillow of new rental listings since the fire appeared to show that prices last week compared to the previous month had risen more than is typical for rentals in Sonoma and Napa, the 2 counties hardest hit. Between September and last week, Zillow data showed a typical asking rent jumped 36% in Sonoma to $3,224 a month from $2,366, and 23% in Napa. So the Californians, you know, when I lived out in California, one thing I consistently saw is the Californians, you know, the state loves taking money from people. Californians love figuring out ways to make more money because it's a very expensive place to live, and it's just the culture there. So not very surprising that Californians are jacking up the rates in the wake of it. Interestingly, though, a spokesman for the California State Attorney General's office said investigators plan to enforce a price gouging provision in the state penal code that prohibits anyone from raising prices more than 10% following the declaration of a state of emergency. So that's going to be interesting to see. But, you know, these images of the fire are really interesting to see. The San Jose Mercury asking, could a better power grid save us? I pulled this up because these fires, which could potentially have been started with directed energy weapons, have been blamed on the local utility company, PG&E. And you can see here in this image, these power lines are down. You look down the street off in the distance, there's more power lines down. And then way off in the distance, you can see some poles standing up. Interestingly, these power lines, which are fairly well fucked, did not start a fire, right? Generally speaking, power lines have got multiple fail-safes, so they're not going to start massive forest fires. The situation in California, on the night of October 8th going into October 9th, we had 22 wildfires start simultaneously. Whoa, Brian Peterson, you actually had a car of yours blow up? Check that out. He says, I've had one of my cars burn and blow, only came about 2 to 3 feet off the ground, nowhere near flipping. Yeah. So, weird. Mark Damon Diaz, you know, we're going back to these people commenting about the fuel tank. Devontae Dixon telling us to research laser drones, right? You know, we can't say with 100% certainty what exactly is going on out in California beyond the fallout. We can't say with exact certainty what caused these fires, but it sure doesn't look like power lines to me. Here we see, you know, another thing that raises a lot of red flags, with me at least, is here's another image. This is a video actually of the fires. Look at these houses totally, you know, here the house is totally gone while surrounded by trees that still have foliage on them, right? This little excerpt of the video. You can find stuff like this all over the internet. See this house totally burned down to the foundation while the trees nearby are relatively unscathed. Again, they're blaming hurricane force winds for spreading these fires, but you'd think that if hurricane force winds were blowing through large areas spreading fires, the trees would get taken out too, you know, in keeping with standard ignition metrics of wildfires. Tara Clinch chiming in, the blue lights was the directed energy eyewitnesses accounts, also possibly laser. Thank you for your comment there, Tara. You know, if anybody's out there in California and you got a drone, you got smartphones with cameras, please try to get out there and get us some more photographic and video evidence of this situation. We covered this situation last week, but global pollution kills at least 9 million a year and threatens the survival of human societies, coming out of the Guardian. Landmark study finds toxic air, water, soils, and workplaces kill at least 9 million people and cost trillions of dollars a year. Okay, keyword there, toxic air, water, soils, and workplaces. Yeah, I think we got a nice little graph here. Look at that. All pollution, 9 million. Tobacco, killing a lot of people too. So, you know, whatever we can do to improve, you know, to decrease the amount of pollution we take in, filtering the water we drink, trying to eat the healthiest food possible, filtering the air that we breathe at home and at work. These things really do help us out. So please, our dear friends here at Wake Up Wyoming, let's all take care of ourselves. Let's really make an effort to do that, because, you know, in order to live happy, healthy, long lives, in order to have our brains functioning as well as possible. We need to decrease our exposure to toxins. And on that topic, oh, snap. Scientists reveal that e-cigs may trigger unique immune responses, right? Real easy to get addicted to various drugs these days. And, you know, I'm no saint either. But if you're thinking that it is safer to switch to an e-cig versus regular cigs, think again. October 20th, coming out of the UPI. As the debate over the safety of electronic cigarettes rages, a new study found that e-cigs trigger damaging immune responses not seen from tobacco cigs. Research from the University of North Carolina has found that not only do e-cigs cause potentially damaging immune responses seen in traditional cigarettes, but they can also trigger a new immune response that has not been seen before in traditional cigarettes. It goes on and on. An earlier study in September by the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm found that nicotine in e-cigs can cause stiffened arteries, leading to an increased risk of heart attack and stroke. In June, researchers at the University of Connecticut found that e-cigs contain a nicotine-based liquid as harmful as unfiltered tobacco cigarettes, and that the vapor from non-nicotine e-cigarettes can lead to similar amounts of DNA damage as filtered cigarettes. Okay, but then again, you know, how credible is this? They're only looking at 44 people total in this study. So, you know, if you want to smoke e-cigs, go for it. But long story short, they're probably not very good for you. On the topic of health, the rate of Americans without health insurance rises, also coming from the UPI on October 20th. No big surprise there. The percentage of American adults without health insurance rose to 12.3% in the third quarter. A Gallup survey released Friday indicated 0.6% higher than the second quarter. The rate of uninsured American adults increased 1.4% since the end of 2016, meaning 3.5 million people are now without health insurance. Of course, you're kind of forced to buy health insurance or you get fined these days. I was watching yesterday in preparation for the interview with StormCloudsGathering. I was watching a really good video he put out years ago, what they don't tell you about Obamacare. And it's funny, the debate about the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, they talked about, what did they talk about? Whether it was socialized medicine or capitalized medicine, like capitalist, socialist, but really Obamacare corporatized medicine, corporatism, the merger of state and corporate power, right? The government hasn't taken the power away from the big insurance companies. They've joined forces with them, and with the IRS as the enforcement arm, forcing all Americans to get that health insurance. So, it sucks. Moving on to other news here. Screen time. Mobile screen time is almost 10% higher, 10 times higher than it was in 2011, according to Quartz. I'm not sure how reputable this source is because I've only seen it for a while, but my buddy Rice Farmer is citing it, so it's got to be halfway decent. Interestingly, I think this statistic's probably a little low. You can see this graph here. They're showing the average mobile media usage for U.S. kids ages 0 through 8. And they're saying kids are only on the phone 50 minutes a day on mobile tech. But I'd say it's probably quite a bit higher than that in real life. While on the topic of mobile usage, this is a great article out of The Atlantic that came out not that long ago in September. A statistical portrait of the smartphone generation. Okay, here at Wake Up Wyoming, we encourage all of you to engage your communities, get out, stay active, enjoy life, enjoy the natural world, and don't fall into the virtual reality of social media, at least not completely, right? It's something we all struggle with because these damn devices are designed to be so addicting, social media designed to give you exactly what you want. And, you know, in addition to that, there really truly is the capability in these technologies to elicit a moth to the flame effect with people where the frequencies emitted by the devices themselves are attractive. So just a heads up there. Please don't text and drive. Please do hang out with your friends. If you saw our interview with Irene Lyon the other day, we saw the importance of human interaction. And looking at these statistics here, pretty wild to see that the times per week teenagers go out without their parents has dropped from 2.9 times per week down to 2.3. And looking at the statistics for younger kids, even a larger drop. Less high school seniors driving, big drop there in the last couple of years. I think, obviously the fact that kids don't have very much money and the economic recovery has really only benefited people who already had a lot of money. That's going to affect kids driving as well. And then dating even, man. The percentage of teenagers, 12th graders who go out on dates was about 70% in 2011 or 2007. Now it's dropping below, it's approaching 50%. So interesting to see these statistics here cited at the Atlantic. And even less sex. Not as severe a decrease there, but we'll see what happens. Also, this feeling of loneliness. More kids feeling lonely and less likely to get enough sleep. Percentage of 8th, 10th, and 12th graders who get less than 7 hours of sleep most nights. Interestingly, look at the spike in the graph there around 2012, where it went from maybe 32, 33%. And in the last 3 years, it has bumped up 7%. That's interesting. It's a real interesting spike there. So I don't know. Take it with a grain of salt, but that's what the Atlantic's throwing at us. Speaking of the digital world, I apologize for this gigantic advertisement here at counterpunch.org. But if you want to have your donation doubled, you can do that at Counterpunch. There's no way for me to get rid of this ridiculous banner here, but this is a really good article by Jason Herthler, published October 20th. Censorship in the Digital Age. Okay, it goes on and on. Talks about how the British government is deciding to prosecute pre-crime, and there's just some really well-written passages in here. So I'm going to read a little list to you because I read this morning. I'm like, darn, this guy's writing very well. So I'm going to read it to you. The Triple Evils. Martin Luther King Jr. famously or infamously, depending on whether you are a penthouse mandarin or garden variety prole, or garden variety proles, I'm pretty sure, linked the triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism. These evils are as yet unaddressed in our society, as we are daily shown on the media mouthpieces of imperial capitalism. Wars must be waged. Victims of social injustice must be incarcerated. Society itself must be made poor to ensure higher profits. Yet there is another set of evils that are primarily used to mask the original trifecta outlined by King. In fact, the connection between propaganda, surveillance, and censorship is clear and inseparable. Take as your initial premise that imperial capitalists want to control the world, not an unjustified claim. As an imperial capitalist, you are part of a privileged minority whose objective is to further exploit the disenfranchised, whose only recourse is the resources you're pillaging. War, be it with bombs or sanctions or special forces or proxies like Syria, like ISIS in Syria, is immensely profitable to the capitalists. Arms makers make money, chemical companies make money, energy companies make money, media companies make money. Presidents not only make money, they also make histories. But the workers, the poor, and the downtrodden pay the price. That's why they won't be happy to hear of your plans. Therefore, they must be lied to so convincingly and comprehensively that they will accept, without a second thought, the plans you have laid out before them. This convincing requires 3 decisive actions: propaganda, surveillance, and censorship. The first is the official lie you craft to convince them to believe you. The second is the dragnet of digital observation by which you assess whether or not they do believe you. The third is the coercive methods by which you punish those that don't believe you, justified by the imperial tale you just wove. The official interpretation of reality is already in place. Western civilization is beset on all sides by maniacs who want to take away our freedoms. The surveillance is already in place through programs like the Five Eyes Alliance of Echelon, Prism, Boundless Informant, FISA, Stellar Wind, and many others. What remains is to tighten the noose of censorship around the neck of our open Western societies. And that's what we're seeing today, unfortunately, in the era where veteran YouTubers' videos are being demonetized, their primary source of income being taken away. Independent media, you see it yourself. You might share something. You share a picture of your dinner. You share a picture of your dog. You share a picture of whatever, something that really doesn't matter. You'll get a whole bunch of likes, probably. But if you share something that really matters, that really is thought-provoking, perhaps Wake Up Wyoming, you probably only get a couple likes, and odds are it would be me and Wake Up News thanking you for your share. So, interesting world we live in today. Do what you can to get the message out. We're going to keep fighting the good fight and exposing all the BS in the world together. So, thank you so much. He goes on and on to talk about the Russian hacking thing, how the story is so transparently false. It goes on and on. Yeah, we could keep reading all this, but let's keep moving on because the show already has a tendency to get really long, and, it is what it is. What is this thing? Look at that. Look at that. That's pretty wild, huh? While people speculate about what that is, I'm going to look at the comments. Mark Angers chiming in there. Cell towers can actually put out microwave frequencies that cook living matter. Yeah, you're right, man. It's pretty disturbing. I really appreciate all these comments here. I'd love to read them all, and I'm going to get into it. It's great to see people talking about microwaves, particle beams, the death ray, because there's a lot of truth to that stuff. It's interesting. If you look at it, you go see a new cell tower, the wiring, right? The physical cables, like the power cables, the power transmission lines going into the modern cell towers are terrifyingly gigantic. The amount of power that can be pumped into these transmission towers is colossal. So I don't know if the shit hits the fan, the guns might not save Leah, but maybe having like a very well rubberized bolt cutter could help out quite a bit in your area. I don't know. I'm not advocating that people go out there and damage infrastructure, but I don't know, if it feels like your whole town's getting cooked by a wireless electromagnetic frequencies, what do you do? Renewable energy threatens the world's biggest science project inside the 24 billion long bet on fusion power in France. That's right. Those are attempts to create nuclear fusion reactors. The world's biggest scientific experiment is on course to become the most expensive source of surplus power. Components of the 20 billion euro project are already starting to pile up at a construction site in the south of France, where about 800 scientists plan to test whether they can harness the power that makes stars shine. Assembly of the machine will start in May. Unlike traditional nuclear plants that split atoms, the so-called ITER reactor will fuse them together at temperatures 10 times hotter than the sun. 150 million degrees Celsius. Okay, looking at the price here, the renewable energies have come down in price substantially over the last several years, and the cost of nuclear fusion, pretty expensive in relation. Of course, if that stuff's actually implemented, if it is brought to a wider, if it's brought online and developed further, the price is obviously going to come down. But just interesting. Moving on back to quartz. Why every electric car maker is scrambling for access to this element. What is the element? What is it? What is it? Does anybody know? It's cobalt. More than 50% of the world's current production of cobalt goes towards making batteries. Though lithium gets all the press at 3 grams per ampere, it is still a small portion of any battery's actual weight and volume, whereas cobalt is extensively used in the production of cathodes, which may make up to up between 35 and 40% of the total material cost of any one battery. The element's type molecular structure means high energy density at less weight than materials like nickel or manganese, which is particularly useful in the portable electronics of today. All of the non-lithium content of an iPhone's battery, for example, is 100% cobalt. 60% of the world's production of cobalt, mainly mined as a byproduct of the production of nickel and copper, comes out of the unstable and war-torn Democratic Republic of Congo. Obtaining long-term predictable supplies of the silver blue element is proving more and more difficult, with countries like France, China, and the Netherlands promising a gas-free future, and Tesla ramping up the production of its market-defining Model 3, available sources of the material are only going to dwindle. Prices for the element have jumped more than 80% in recent years. So if you play the stock market, you like commodities, take a look at cobalt. This article by Kent Moores at oilprice.com, pretty interesting. You know, you talk about high-tech advanced batteries like the lithium-ion / cobalt batteries. Well, MIT just revealed a game-changing battery breakthrough, but it's not real high-tech. It's not using real rare metals. So let's check it out. This is kind of interesting. Last week, researchers at MIT reported progress on what may be a huge step towards being able to store large amounts of energy for long periods of time very cheaply, is what he's saying. On October 11th, MIT-based researchers reported that they had developed an air-breathing battery capable of storing electricity for long periods of time at about $20 per kilowatt hour. The technical paper is out there. MIT's news release says as follows. For its anode, the rechargeable flow battery uses cheap, abundant sulfur dissolved in water. An aerated liquid salt solution in the cathode continuously takes in and releases oxygen that balances charge as ions shuttle between the electrodes. Oxygen flowing into the cathode causes the anode to discharge electrons to an external circuit. Oxygen flowing out sends electrons back to the anode, recharging the battery. One principal at the MIT project put it this way. This battery literally inhales and exhales air, but it doesn't exhale carbon dioxide like humans. It exhales oxygen. The key thing here, the take-home lesson, the new battery technology is dirt cheap and very efficient. The major issue, according to researchers, has been the need to synthesize materials to increase the energy density of batteries. How much power you can store in a battery of given size. We can do it, but the materials required, like lithium and cobalt, are inordinately expensive. That's where the air-breathing battery comes in. By relying on sulfur and air, it's dirt cheap. The total chemical cost for these battery systems is about 3% that of a lithium battery, but it can store electricity for prolonged periods of time for a fraction of the cost now required by less efficient systems. It's a flow battery, but it goes on and on. So a key thing here, really cheap battery being developed at MIT. That's pretty cool. This is kind of news of the weird. When the Chicago River runs backward, there's no denying the danger of climate change, says the Chicago Sun-Times. Interestingly, the Chicago River has already been running backward for 100 years. They redirected the Chicago River long ago, so it didn't flow into Lake Michigan. The Chicago River ran backward during those crazy rainstorms last weekend. That's right, it rained so hard for so long that the river turned tail and flowed into Lake Michigan. Take a moment to think about that incredible fact. More than a century ago, Chicago pulled off an engineering marvel, reversing the flow of the Chicago River so that it would stop dumping dangerous pollution in the lake and our drinking water. For hours on Saturday and Sunday, the river returned to its old course, bringing billions of gallons of sewage along with it. So, like we just mentioned, the river used to flow back into Lake Michigan, or used to flow into Lake Michigan. Then they somehow, using engineering technology, reversed the flow of the river, stranger than fiction, and now, because of a huge rainstorm, so much runoff was flowing into the river that it switched back to its original configuration, flowing into the river. Of course, they blamed climate change, but they never mention geoengineering weather warfare. Moving on to financial news, we're at the Nikkei Asian Review, and the ex-European Central Bank chief cautions that heavy reliance on central banks could have us heading into another crisis. Look at this guy. He's smiling. He's got plenty of money. He ain't really worried. Jean-Claude Trichet, former president of the ECB, warned of ballooning global debt in a recent interview with the Nikkei, saying, "Be very careful. A new crisis can occur." The debt to GDP ratio, which has been rising primarily in emerging markets, is sending such signals, he said. He goes on and on. The ratio of private debt as a proportion of overall GDP. The ratio increased as much as 25 percentage points between 2000 and 2007, from 250 to 275%. The jump was partly responsible for the global financial crisis. After the crisis, the figure is still rising rather than falling, reaching 300% today. Again, that's the proportion between the overall outstanding global public and private debt as a proportion of the overall GDP. Other news, now that the stock market's been hovering at all-time record highs, all the financial pundits are chiming in there. They want to sound smart, so they're all saying, there's a crash coming, there's a crash coming. And that's what they're saying here at Bloomberg today. The U.S. posts its largest budget deficit since 2013. The deficit widened to $665.7 billion for the 2017 fiscal year. Of course, that's pretty close. Only $0.3 billion away from the mark of the beast, 666. What does it all mean? I don't know. But the Associated Press reporting that Yellen says the Fed's extraordinary policies may be needed again. On Friday, Federal Reserve Chief defended the central bank's extraordinary efforts to fight the Great Recession and said they might be needed again. Okay, they pushed short-term interest rates to zero. They started printing a bunch of money. Blah, blah, blah. Interestingly, the Fed was going to unwind the QE program. It's on September 20th. They had a momentous announcement at the Fed meeting confirming that they had been telegraphing for months. The QE unwind would begin around October 1st, but that hasn't happened. They were supposed to decrease the balance sheet by $10 billion per month starting in October, but in fact, their balance sheet is going up. The balance sheet is up $10 billion. You read that correctly. Since October 4th, the balance sheet gained $10 billion, all of it in the week ending October 18th. The Fed is supposed to unload $10 billion in October, but curiously, so far, it has done the opposite. So they say one thing, they do another. No big surprise there. We just read a little bit from Trichet, the former head of the European Central Bank. This is coming out of the New Statesman. It's a little old, but it's important to note for anybody that's not totally clued into how these QE programs work, how the world's greatest financial experiment enriched the rich. Western governments have printed trillions of dollars to boost their economies, while the asset rich have reaped the benefits of quantitative easing. Millennials and the poor and everybody that works for a living and doesn't just invest in speculative nonsense has lost out. Of course, they start off with that famous quote from Mayor Amschel Rothschild: "Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws." The pretentious ass Mayor Amschel Rothschild of the Rothschild banking dynasty. The most powerful place in Europe is not the boardroom of its biggest company, the trading floor of its richest bank, or even the Bundestag chambers of Angela Merkel. It is a nondescript room on the 7th floor of the ECB that, overlooking a former wholesale meat market, resembles a suburban call center. Bare walls painted dull white, floor-to-ceiling windows, and open-plan desks littered with headsets, computer monitors, and little else. Secrecy is paramount. There are no mobile phones. All telephone conversations are recorded, and notepads are not even permitted to be taken outside. Nicknamed the kitchen, it is where 20 traders help create 3 billion euros per day at the stroke of a keyboard in the greatest financial experiment ever undertaken. Since the beginning of the global financial crisis in 2008, the major central banks have been endowed with unprecedented clout. They can cause economies to contract or expand, create or destroy millions of jobs, and violently change the flow of trillions of dollars sluicing through the world economy with a single public statement. Okay, so bam, there you go. Yesterday in our interview with Aaron Hawkins from the island of Dominica, we had a good chat about the fact that the money's not flowing there. They're having to live without money, right? We also had a good talk about Bitcoin. He kind of sharing my sentiments that, maybe it's a good idea, but is it going to work? Is it really wise? You see in places like Puerto Rico and Dominica, when the power goes out for extended periods of time, what you gonna do if all you got is Bitcoin? If you can't, even if you have power, what if you can't connect with your smartphone? Or what if your computer gets hacked and somebody steals all your Bitcoins? That's a legitimate concern. All these things are legitimate concerns. So whether or not Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies are the solution to the problem or just a Trojan horse, it's important to diversify, right? I kind of get the sense that everybody who's going all into cryptos is kind of like lambs to the slaughter, encouraging people to devote a lot of their time and effort and energy to, and focus a lot of their mental capacity, a lot of their faith, tricking people into putting faith in these cryptocurrencies, where we see 300% increases this year. Bitcoin smashes through 6,100 to hit a new record high. Coming out of the clowns at CNBC. Bitcoin hit a new record high above 6,100 on Friday. Bitcoin broke through 6,000 for the first time. Investors appear to be shrugging off risks like the upcoming fork or split in Bitcoin. So who knows what's going to happen with the cryptos. If you're playing that game, keep a close eye on it. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Having some cash around, having some gold around, having some beans, bullets, and bullion, all pretty good ideas. But the cryptos, they're pretty good. Thank you for all the comments. I'm still just plugging away here with the news. Speaking of cryptos, this is coming out of Sprott Money. China and Russia going full steam ahead towards a cashless society by Rory Hall a week ago on October 17th, 2018. Fewer and fewer people understand the importance of using cash to protect themselves from an overarching government warlord. At the time, China's use of digitized currency was growing at about 40% annually. This means millions of people each year freely hand over their cash and opt to use their cell phone, online currency transfers, or plastic to make 100% of their purchases. We see this as nothing short of happily going into the gulag of digital enslavement. Today we learned China is taking another step towards being a cashless society. Again, this was written a week ago. Not just any cashless society, but the largest populated nation on the planet. Also the largest real economy, right? Please keep in mind this announcement is coming on the heels of China's closest ally, Russia, announcing it would be issuing a crypto ruble, which is a digitized currency as well. Once these two nations go cashless, that will be a huge blow to hard currency in circulation around the world. Article goes on, but yeah, interesting stuff. Speaking of which, will cryptocurrencies trash cash? The Fedcoin could do it. Coming out of PitchBook News and Analysis by Anthony Murhaidari on October 18th. The cryptocurrency hype train obviously has no brakes, but could it eventually replace cash in the U.S.? According to the Thinking of Economics cited by the BIS, that's the Bank of International Settlements, it just might. And to the chagrin of the anti-establishment types that fueled Bitcoin's early rise, it will likely be run by the Federal Reserve. Alternatives such as the U.S. dollar and gold bullion have faded in stature as prices have fallen all year, while Bitcoin has pushed past $6,100. Both China and Russia are exploring the use of blockchain technology to create their own stake-backed cryptocurrencies. And a recent Bank of America Merrill Lynch fund manager survey showed long Bitcoin as one of the most popular trades on Wall Street right now. ICO activity is red hot, an area they've covered at length recently in light of intense VC interest in blockchain startups. Many show promise, like Tezos, which is trying to decentralize the governance process behind the blockchain, or Tether, which is trying to refocus interest on cryptos as an actual medium of exchange, versus the current obsession with speculating for fast gains by tethering it via peg to the US dollar or other national currencies. But many more stretch the limits of reasonableness. Paris Hilton, of all people, and Floyd Mayweather, the guy who rigs boxing matches, have promoted ICOs on Twitter, for example. Others don't really need any further explanation. Dogecoin, Potcoin, Trump coin, Ponzi coin, and Jesus coin. Not a bubble, clearly. So cryptos, who knows? But we keep an eye on them because we try to stay aware of what's going on in the world. In the news of the weird, one of our readers, I can't remember who, I think it might have been Scotty Holman. Thanks to everybody that sends me stories, by the way. It might not have been Scott. Maybe it was John Adamo. I got to check. I get so many emails from y'all every day, or so many messages on Facebook. I really appreciate all the feedback. It's hard to get to all of it. But to get hurricane rebuilding money in Texas, contractors must promise they won't boycott Israel. Okay? Signed in law in July, House Bill 89 prohibits the state from entering into contract with a business unless it does not boycott Israel and will not boycott Israel during the term of the contract. This law applies even to businesses that would refuse to buy products made in illegal Israeli settlements on Palestinian land, as it defines Israel as both Israel proper and Israel-controlled territory. Here's a sample application for a Harvey rebuilding contract from the city of Dickinson, Texas. Point number 11. By executing this agreement below, the applicant verifies that the applicant, 1, does not boycott Israel, and 2, will not boycott Israel during the term of this agreement. Stranger in fiction, it's the world we live in. Love it. Now we're done with all that hoo-ha. Thank you so much for dealing with me as I went through that. Look at all these great comments. Thank you so much. I'm just scrolling through here. It's great to see everybody in here. What's up, Daniel Reichert, Shannon Wendricks, David Coco Rico, Mark and Cheers, JR Filthy, all y'all. Thank you so much. April Boso, thank you for tuning in as well. The Jackson Hole Daily, the paper servicing the wealthiest county per capita in North America. That's why we read it. Okay, funny, you know, as all this wild stuff goes on around the world, as we got all these crazy headlines of all sorts of things. The big news in Jackson, some grizzly cubs from Cody, Wyoming found a new home. And they identified the drug pusher musher in the Iditarod. It was 4-time winner. What's his name? Doesn't even matter. But long story short, you know you got an opioid problem in North America when even the Iditarod dogs are on opioids. Look at that. I threw that in there. Moving along, let's see what we got in here. Really not too exciting in the paper today. My buddy Bob McLaren, great guy. He's retiring from being the town manager. Bob, you will be sorely missed. You rock at keeping Jackson Hole running. And I always enjoyed serving you at the bar down at the work. Serving you Bud Light Draft and Jack on the Rocks. So, Bob, I'll see you around, brother. Good to see you. Not really much going on. Again, this paper is 70% advertising, 20% fluff, 10% actual news. You know, in their coverage of the fires in California, for example, we could be focused on the rent going up. We could be focused on how the fires got started and so on and so forth. But instead, it's a human interest story about people playing hockey in Santa Rosa. Not really news, not really that important, but that's how your mainstream works. Again, this is a typical page in the Jackson Hole Daily. You got one article, and you got 75% ads. No shortage of money here, but it's invested into fine art, multi-million-dollar log cabins, you know, fancy new Land Rovers and such, and not into things like the independent media or things that actually matter. Classic distraction, you know, Donnie T, the divider in chief, the angry widow of the soldier he called joins the fray, attacking Trump for being a dick. We all know Trump's a dick. He's the divider in chief. That's why he's in there. And the Senate advances a $36.5 billion relief package. Interestingly, very little of that money is going to Puerto Rico. The Senate on Monday gave a preliminary green light to a $36.5 billion hurricane relief package that would provide Puerto Rico with a much-needed infusion of cash. Okay, provides $18.7 billion to FEMA, $16 billion to financially troubled federal flood insurance programs to pay an influx of Harvey-related claims, and it looks like Puerto Rico is just getting about $500 million out of that $36.5 billion. Again, the contract that Puerto Rico gave strangely to a electrical contractor in Montana that only had 2 full-time employees on the day that the hurricane struck. Makes no sense. $300 million. So the amount of money going to Puerto Rico might just cover the electrical reconstruction costs plus a little more. JR Filthy chiming in, yeah, they are trying to depopulate that island. You know, I think you're right, JR. It sure seems like it to me. And it's heartbreaking to see because there are 3.4 million people who live there, and they're American citizens. And Puerto Rico, you know, they always make such a big deal like, oh, Puerto Rico is $70 billion in debt. Like, dude, the United States federal government is $20 trillion in debt, right? Let's do a little quick math here. I got the TI-86. I stole this from my little brother. You know, anybody remember these calculators from back in the day? That's pretty fun. So 20 trillion, or we'll go 20 divided by 300 million. Okay, I'm not going to do the math right now. But the point is, as a factor of the population, you have 3.4 million Puerto Ricans, whereas there are about 340 million Americans. So there are about 100 times as many Americans living on American soil as Puerto Ricans living on the island of Puerto Rico, right? So let's see. How do I do this math? Somebody fill me in. This is embarrassing. Too many irons in the fire. But if there's 70 trillion in debt, divided by 3.4 million, okay, yeah. I'm not going to deal with it right now. I'll figure it out. It's too much brain bandwidth when I'm trying to keep everybody entertained. Yeah. So I should have done that math in advance. Of course. Moving on, showing the limits of my brain capacity. Within the next 3 decades, floods that used to strike New York City once every 500 years could occur every 5 years, according to a new study released just days before the 5th anniversary of Superstorm Sandy. The study, performed by researchers at several universities and published Monday in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, primarily blames the predicted change on sea level rise caused by what? Global warming, of course. So, yeah, it is what it is. They blame global warming, never mention climate change. John McCain calling Trump a draft dodger, you know, more division, more distraction. ISIS went into a small Syrian town with a hit list. And by the time they left 3 weeks later, more than 70 civilians had been killed. Again, ISIS funded, supported, backed by the U.S. military-industrial complex. The most popular independent radio station in Moscow, their leading journalist was stabbed in the throat Monday by an attacker who burst into her studio. Tatiana Felgenhauer, editor-in-chief, Deputy Editor Tatia Felgenhauer is her name. And the attacker, after being apprehended, told investigators he had been in telepathic contact with Felgenhauer for 5 years. So I don't know why somebody's going after the largest independent radio personality in Russia, but she got stabbed in the throat by a man claiming to have been in telepathic contact with her. Okay, the EPA won't let scientists discuss climate change. I don't know. Again, the big deal is geoengineering, weather modification, weather warfare. Michael Shane, Kirkpatrick chiming in, mind control programs, maybe. Perhaps. You never know. Daniel Reichert chiming in there. Good points on the deficits, right? If we're talking about the deficit in the U.S., let's not forget $9 trillion that magically disappeared from the Federal Reserve. And, the Pentagon, for example, admitting they lost $2.3 trillion the day before 9/11. You never know. J.R. Filthy saying, I hear the real number is 100 trillion and the media won't tell us. Okay? Or somebody won't tell us. So thank you all for the comments there. You never know. When there's funny money circulating around, all sorts of tricks can be played. Bottom line is the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting fucked over, and the government's laughing, the media's lying. It's all a big shit storm. In kind of good news, this guy, Lamonte McIntyre, who was imprisoned at the age of 18 for 23 years for a double murder he always said he didn't commit, has been freed. Interesting story there. Yeah, I could go on and on, but long story short, it sounds like the detective who put him away was trying to sleep with his mama, and she said no. So they threw him in jail for 23 years. But he's out. He's 41. Just imagine what it's like to be wrongly accused, wrongly convicted, thrown in jail for 23 years as an 18-year-old man. This is the kind of corruption, this is the kind of systemic nonsense that we are fighting against. So thank you all for caring. We really appreciate that. In business news, U.S. stocks have skidded from all-time record highs. They've dropped a little bit. I don't know what it means, but industrial and technology companies and retailers all stumbled Monday as U.S. stocks began the week with losses. Interestingly, General Electric stock fell 6.3%, and it's down 29% this year. Does anybody know why GE stock has been getting schmapped on so bad, just utterly decimated? Other industrial firms also took losses. Arconic, which makes aluminum parts for the aerospace and other industries, fell 9.2% after it disclosed a smaller than expected profit and named former GE executive Charles Blankenship as its next CEO. Who knows? I wonder if Arconic makes the geoengineering aluminum nanoparticles that are being sprayed on our heads too. News of the weird: 238 cities fighting to host the new headquarters for Amazon.com, the world's largest retailer, offering billions of dollars in tax breaks to the Amazonians just to get more economic activity in their town. Interestingly, Amazon.com is basically Walmart, basically Kmart. It's a retailer. What's the big deal? The satirical Ask a Mexican column hangs up its hat. That's sad to see. That's always been fun to read in the independent media. Lots more here. What do we got in the papes? Thank you all for bearing with me as we run through the mainstream. I'm getting kind of tired of doing this again, or getting tired of going through the mainstream, trying to make sense of it, because it's just so much nonsense. For example, we got a half page devoted to a book review of a fictional novel that basically just bashes on Russia hardcore. And this is an advertisement for a book. It's not historically accurate. It's about a fictional baron in Russia who is put on house arrest in a fancy hotel in Moscow and kept there for decades, and his story, but it's not true. It didn't actually happen. So, classic Russia bashing there. Stephen Hawking put out his doctoral thesis at Cambridge University. Interestingly, they posted it on the Cambridge University website, and they say that there was so much interest in downloading Stephen Hawking's senior honors or his doctoral thesis that it crashed the university's website. I'm going to call bullshit on that. I'm pretty sure that in the era where you can live stream from my house and you can, millions of people are live streaming as they play video games continuously. Cambridge University probably has a pretty resilient computer network. I can't imagine that a lot of people downloading or viewing a text web page would crash the Cambridge University servers. But I could be wrong. Just seems kind of weird. It sounds like they're just tooting their own horn, pimping up Stephen Hawking's accomplishments. I don't want to knock on Stephen Hawking per se, but the notion that the overwhelming interest in people wanting to simultaneously get their hands on Stephen Hawking's doctoral thesis, a text file, would crash their servers sounds like nonsense to me. Michael Shane Kirkpatrick saying, I don't believe anything about Stephen Hawkins. Stephen Hawkins is literally a mouthpiece. He's been the oldest living person for decades with ALS. And Michael Shane Kirkpatrick saying, I will knock on him. Right on, Michael. Thanks for speaking your mind. We appreciate that. Again, I'm just calling it out because it seems like BS. You try to, you think you can trust academia. You think you can trust the mainstream media. Think again, because they make shit up all the time. And the notion that the Cambridge University servers would crash from so many people simultaneously wanting to download Stephen Hawking's doctoral thesis smells fishy. On that note, thank you all for bearing with me on this long show today. We're into the scopes. I know people love the scopes, so let me know what you want to get read. I'm a Taurus, so I'm going to read mine first. 4-star day. Again, I don't really believe the horoscopes 100%, but they're in the paper. I read the paper, and people seem to enjoy me reading them out loud, so I'm doing it. Doing it for you today. Taurus, I'm having a 4-star day. One-on-one relating helps you create more of what you want. Maybe I should be interacting with my audience more here, so I'll try to do that. But it's hard when I'm getting used to this new format. Thank you all for your patience with this. Take news with a grain of salt. Okay. You will want to review what you hear, as you could be surprised by it. You might find that you tend to lose your temper when trying to see the big picture. Tonight, take a long weekend. I can't, because tomorrow I'm interviewing Richard Gage from Architects and Engineers for 911Truth. Thank God we got the new webcam just in time. Jerry Wallace looking for Scorpio. Here we go, brother. 4-star day for you, Jerry. Be more forthright in how you express your thoughts. You'll regret an agreement you have made. However, it might be impossible to change course now. You will be surprised by a suggestion that a friend or loved one makes. Tonight, be careful when discussing your feelings, Jerry. Jerry, love you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Brian Peterson looking for the Aries. Here we go, bro. Excuse me. 4-star day for you, Brian. Your fatigue emerges after having to repeat the same conversation and not coming out with better results. Attempt to understand what can occur if you detach. Make fewer judgments and listen well to what you are hearing. Curb a tendency to be sarcastic. Yeah, I got to work on that too. Tonight, out late. Enjoy your night, Brian. Thank you so much for tuning in. Michael Shane Kirkpatrick looking for Capricorn. Here we go, brother. 3-star day for you, Michael. Make it okay to play it low key and understand what is going on behind the scenes. You will see a change that you might have felt coming on. The unexpected occurs on the home front, which impacts your plans. Tonight, rather than start a fight, try to understand what is going on. Angie Eagle looking for Cancer. Here we go. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, Angie. 5-star day for you, my sweet, sweet friend. Love having you here. The same with all of our regular viewers. If it wasn't for people like you, I'd just be a guy sitting in his undisclosed location talking to himself. So thank you so much. 5-star day. You'll want to allow others to run with the ball. You actually might have better ideas than they do, but they might not be able to hear you. Anger comes out despite your desire to remain calm. Try not to direct it on anyone who does not deserve it. Tonight, Angie Eagle, hang in there. Ava Child's looking for Virgo. Zachary Coons, our founder of Wake Up News, he's a Virgo too. It's funny, yesterday after my interview with Aaron Hawkins, StormCloudsGathering from the island of Dominica. Zach immediately called me up and he said, dude, you got to stop looking around and focusing on the screen because it looks like you're on acid. That's how he described it. Rest assured, I'm not on acid. I'm just trying to figure out how to interview people and run this whole new thing here simultaneously. So hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to remember to stare at the camera and smile and be a good little talking head. If anybody wants to help out and be like my sound guy and get things going, please, I'm all for it. I could use some help around here. 3-star day for you, Ava. Sorry for the digression there. Touch base with a loved one. Listen to this person more carefully than you have in the past. Understand your limits when dealing with a roommate or family member. Tension will ease up later when you have a more open talk. Tonight, make plans to visit with a dear friend. So there you go, Ava. Thank you so much. Daniel Reichert, looking for the Pisces. Daniel, I have to admit, you know, I love having you around, but your profile picture is creeping me out, bro. Is this just like a Halloween thing? You know, I want to see that smiling, happy, loving Daniel Reichert that we all know and love so much. And like I said, that profile pic scares me, bro. But love you, Daniel. You're having a 3-star day. Pisces. You could be overloaded with others' needs that you can't seem to come to terms with what is happening around you. You will, but at your own pace. You could find it difficult to get ahead of a problem, but you will succeed quickly. Tonight, find your friends and party away. So enjoy that, Daniel. I don't mean to knock on your profile picture too much, but it's scary. Again, Halloween is coming up, so I guess I should just shut my mouth on that. April Boso, thank you so much for tuning in, your positivity, your comments. You're having a 4-star day, April. The Aries. Your fatigue emerges after having to repeat the same conversation and not coming out with better results. Attempt to understand what can occur if you detach. Make fewer judgments and listen well to what you are hearing. Curb a tendency to be sarcastic. Tonight, out late. Chi-Town Nista, what's up? Thank you so much for tuning in. You are a Virgo, and we read that one already, but I'm going to read it again. 3-star day for you, Chi-Town. So take it easy. Touch base with a loved one. Listen to this person more carefully than you have in the past. Understand your limits when dealing with a roommate or family member. Tension will ease up later when you have a more open talk. Tonight, make plans to visit a dear friend. Sue Green, what's up? Darn, I missed you. Now I'll have to watch later. Capricorn. Excuse me. Thank you, Sue. Here we go. 3-star day. Make it okay to play it low-key and understand what is going on behind the scenes. You will see a change that you might have felt coming on. The unexpected occurs on the home front, which impacts your plans. Tonight, rather than start a fight, try to understand what is going on. Daniel, right on. Only Halloween, buddy. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you, too. Chi-Town, make it a 5-star. People taking off. Yeah, so that's it. Wake Up Wyoming, winding down for the day. Thanks again to everybody who has supported the show. Really appreciate you all. I'm going to drop my Patreon page in there because, as you can see, you know, we've upgraded the hosting at wakeupnews.net. Need to get more posted there. If anybody wants to contribute to Wake Up News, help out in some way, we're still looking for a good graphic designer. We're still looking for people who want to help out in some ways. And I certainly appreciate everybody that sends me links, sends me positive feedback or constructive criticism. If anybody wants to support me directly, check out my Patreon page. Getting a lot more going there. We've got 6 patrons for a whopping $308 a month. Really appreciate that. Again, I'm reinvesting all that money into the show. New equipment, new capabilities. We got this Be Live service where it makes it a lot easier to interview people, trying to get some good guests on here for you, trying to post lots of things. And so, yeah, any support you can give, even if it's just a couple bucks a month, is huge. And I want to thank everybody that has supported the show. Thank everybody that tunes in, whether you can, you know, whether or not you can contribute a couple bucks to keep this show rolling along. We certainly appreciate having you here in the audience, all your comments, all your likes, all your shares. I'm going to go through and read them all now. Laura Christine Wintra, sorry you did miss me, but don't worry, I will be back tomorrow live, and it'll be an honor to interview the indomitable, unbelievable, well, very believable, very credible Richard Gage of Architects and Engineers for 911Truth tomorrow at 11 a.m. right here at Wake Up News. We've already posted the notification video, so check that out here at Wake Up. Click Get Notified, and you should be notified when we go live tomorrow with Richard Gage. And if anybody has questions they want me to ask Richard, send me a message. It's better to add me as a friend than to send them straight to Wake Up, because we get a lot of comments at Wake Up, and I don't get notified on my phone when a comment comes to Wake Up, but I do get notified from personal messages from friends. So, if you got a question for me, add me as a friend, send it to my personal page, and maybe I'll get to ask it to Richard Gage tomorrow. So thank you so much for tuning in. Your boy Mog, stay active, stay aware, stay focused. I'm out of here. One love. Peace. It's funny, too. I hit the end broadcast button now. Where is it? Got the whole new setup here. End broadcast. For whatever reason, I got to